Localization is a tricky thing. When a video game made in one country ends up getting released somewhere else, for example, a Japanese game getting a US release, not only do you have to translate the in-game text, dialogue, and voice clips, but you also need to consider so many other factors. Is there anything in the game that's specific to Japanese culture and wouldn't be understood by most Americans? Is there anything in the game that's totally normal in Japan but would be considered offensive or taboo in the United States? So in many cases, you end up making a lot more changes to the game than simply doing a one-to-one translation of the text. And even then, that's just the game itself. After that's packaged and ready to go, there's another important factor to be considered, and that's how you're going to sell it. To advertise your game and make it look as appealing as possible, you can't simply follow the same process you did for the game and bring over the Japanese advertising with some minor regional changes. What's appealing in Japan is not necessarily as appealing in America or Europe or anywhere else. I assume some of the people who are watching this video right now are American, and I want to directly ask those people, is this advertisement appealing to you?
What are friends? Friends are there to pick you up when you're feeling a little down. Friends are there to rearrange someone's face when they're acting like a clown. Friends are a hamster, a fish, and an owl in Kirby's Dreamland 2. If you ain't fighting on their side, well, man, I'd pity you.
What's the first thing to come to mind when you hear the name Kirby? For some, it could be the bright, pastel visuals of the Super Nintendo games. For others, it might be the cute, creative assortment of copy ability combinations you can pull off in Kirby 64. But for me, it's gotta be that iconic scene of Kirby and his animal buddies tearing ass through a grimy dive bar and violently beating the shit out of a biker gang. It's a little weird, though. I don't remember this level from Dreamland 2. Must have been a secret area or something. Oh well. At least it shows off a bunch of cool stuff I do remember, like Kirby sucking up an enemy. That's always fun, right? You know, I don't know if I remember Kirby being that sinister while eating enemies. Actually, can we see the Japanese ad for this game? I'm kind of curious if it's different at all.
今度のカービィはただのやんちゃ坊主じゃないよ。3匹の強い仲間がついているのさ。スーパーゲームボーイならカラーでやんちゃ放題大暴れ。ゲームボーイソフト星のカービィ2新発売。
Huh. America got Kirby and his animal buddies knocking a biker gang's teeth out, and Japan got cute balloon animals. So what this seems to suggest is that Japan uses Kirby's cuteness as a selling point while the US actively tries to distract from it. And looking at other promotional material, yeah, that definitely seems to be the case. At some point in time, people on the internet started noticing that, while Kirby's usually smiling on the Japanese cover art for his games, he typically looks angry on the American equivalent. TV Tropes effectively calls this American Kirby is hardcore. Here's a few examples, some of which are even using the same art, just with a modified facial expression. Shout out to Kirby Air Ride for not only taking away his smile, but also his luminescent glow. Aww. Shinya Kumazaki, the director of Kirby Triple Deluxe, who's been with HAL since the early 2000s, actually talked about this a bit during an interview in 2014. He says that, while cuteness tends to be Kirby's biggest draw in Japan, Nintendo of America is in charge of marketing for America, and they provide HAL with feedback and insight into the US market. What we have heard is that strong, tough Kirby that's really battling hard is a more appealing sign of Kirby, so that's what we feature in the US. I don't think the angry, determined-looking Kirby is always a bad call for the US market, but in some cases I wondered, why bother? It's like the cover art looks largely the same, and at the end of the day you're still buying a game about a flying pink ball. Is a smile really going to be the difference that could result in losing a customer? Overall though, it's not a huge deal now. Kirby's even been allowed to smile on a few boxes since the late 2000s. Aww. Before Brawl though, Kirby pretty much never smiled on a Wait a second. These games are even older than Air Ride and Squeak Squad, but they have a smiling Kirby? Does this mean they only started making him hardcore in the 2000s? But that can't be right! The commercial I showed at the beginning of this video was from the 90s! Well, that's exactly it. Bizarrely enough, while the game boxes here still tended to feature a smiling, or at least a neutral Kirby before the 2000s, the advertising was even more hardcore than it is now. Here's a few examples.
Recently, we compared two superheroes, Dashing Super Guy and Kirby from Nintendo. In some ways, Kirby lost big. No big hair, no big muscles, no weapons, nothing. All Kirby's got is appetite. Kirby's Dream Land, the thrilling new adventure game on Game Boy. Kirby munches, spits back, and floats, saving glorious Dreamland. He's Kirby, and he packs a mean bite. Kirby's Dream Land only on Game Boy. Game Boy sold separately.
Who's Kirby? Behind the flabby facade, a physical powerhouse. A street fighter. A weapons expert. He's whatever the situation demands. In Kirby's adventure, evil King Dedede's stolen Dreamland's dreams. Now Kirby's fighting to get him back, level by nightmarish level. That's Kirby. He's cute. Till you cross him, then he's one tough cream puff. Kirby's Adventure on NES.
Muffin is a tabby, Buddy is a retriever, and Kirby is, well, Kirby is just Kirby.
Kirby's back with amazing new attack combinations in Kirby 64. Rated E.
Those are all pretty good, but in my mind, they pale in comparison to the way they marketed Kirby's Dream Course and Kirby's Avalanche. Side note, Kirby's Avalanche is actually a good example of over-the-top localization in and of itself, because it's a reskinned version of the Japan-only game Super Puyo Puyo. The Puyo Puyo series used to only get Western releases with the original cast of characters swapped for more established, marketable ones. Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine is another example, and something similar happened with Panel de Pon and Tetris Attack. Because Kirby's Avalanche had its dialogue written by Americans in the 90s, Kirby is also much more of an asshole than he usually is. Anyways, the advertising. I'd like to show you a TV commercial followed by a magazine ad, both with the same central theme.
Alright, son, what's he look like?
Well, he was pink.
Caucasian?
No, pink.
Big, you say?
Yeah, like a big marshmallow.
And what'd he do?
He made me and my friend play this game, Avalanche, and he dumped all these little blobs on me. And the only way that I could survive was if I buried my buddy in boulders.
Oh, look, he's a cutie. Is this the guy?
Kirby's Avalanche, the chain reaction puzzle game. Or try Kirby's Dream Course. It's Psycho Golf in 3D, only for Super NES.
Alright, son. Marshmallow?
Wow. In Japan, Kirby is just a cute, happy, ambiguously gendered pink puffball. In America, Kirby is a fucking criminal. I get wanting Kirby to look cooler or more determined or whatever, but 90s Nintendo literally turned him into an angry, hardened madman who got into bar fights and sadistically pit teenagers against each other using strategy-oriented Japanese puzzle games. And honestly, I kinda love it. Watching the edge-obsessed 90s version of Nintendo of America fumble their way through marketing what is now such an iconic character is bizarre and interesting in a way that I can't fully explain. And to see how that practice continues in a more subtle way, even to this day, is equally fascinating. There's plenty of similar ways that other games have gone through localization changes, and I might talk about some of them in a future video, but I'm content just talking about Kirby for now. I'm Jonii, and Kirby is one tough cream puff. Peace.